All right, my friends, we are here to talk about Kaleidescape again, the Strato V, their flagship media player. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasala with Audioholics. We got another video with Matt Pose. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good. It's as if we're in the same room shooting multiple videos or something back to back.
You know, I love these collabs. I wanted to come here. I wanted to experience his theater room because he's got an exceptional theater room, as you saw in our Perlisten video. You got a 7.6.6 system with 2 rows of seats with Trinnov waveforming.
So I have 4 subwoofers in the front, 2 in the back, and it's 418s from RTJ, which is the custom installer line from JTR. So plenty of bass, and recently added the Kaleidescape Strato V player. So excellent source as well.
Before we get into what the Strato V is, let's talk about the benefits of why you'd want Kaleidescape over just streaming from an Apple TV or a Roku.
Well, so you know this, and actually I feel like we had some conversations about this where you were streaming some movies before you got to experience the Kaleidescape as well. There's no denying that the best quality streaming has gotten a lot better than it used to be. There's also no denying that it does not equal the quality you get from discs or a Kaleidescape.
Ultra HD Blu-ray in particular.
Right. One of the things you have is sound quality. And you had mentioned that you were shocked at how much better the sound was when you switched over to the Kaleidescape versus the streaming.
Yeah, in fact, when I did my first video of Kaleidescape with Brad from Home Theater Gamer, we compared Top Gun Maverick on stream on Apple TV versus on Kaleidescape. The first thing I noticed was the bass. There was much more deep bass, more impactful on the Kaleidescape. The second thing I noticed, which surprised me, was the envelope of sound, the Atmos effect, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, you feel more immersed in the movie.
You feel more immersed, you feel the tops are activated more. Then we found out through one of these mixers that we had on, John Traunwieser, that when you're streaming, it's bandwidth limiting the heights, the top channels.
Yeah, so it's using Dolby Digital Plus, and Dolby Digital Plus has less ability, apparently, in the metadata to include as much information as is possible Dolby True HD. So that's one issue. And then Dolby Digital Plus itself is a lossy encoding technique, whereas Dolby True HD, which is what's used on Kaleidescape and on Blu-ray and UHD discs, which is a lossless encoding, like FLAC, basically.
Right.
What that means is that you do seem to get a more immersive sound, more dynamic range, better bass, and the sound difference is not subtle. Like, you noticed it, I did too. I mean, I actually was kind of surprised because streaming had gotten so good that I just kind of out of convenience switched over to streaming and wasn't using my disc player anymore. And then I went and tried some discs out that I had of movies I could stream, and I was like, oh no, that's like night and day better.
Well, one thing we also learned about streaming, and I'm not bashing streaming because 90% of what I do, I stream. When I watch TV shows, it's very convenient. Yeah. But there's post-processing that's often done on streaming platforms. That way it's optimized for TV speakers or sound bars. So right there, you're getting more compression and you're getting more limiting, especially with the surround effect.
It varies by studio. And even amongst the studios, there's a lot that happens. But basically, you start with this hero mix. And then that hero mix gets turned into the far field mix. That's used in commercial cinemas. So they take that far field mix, that actually gets converted over. The moment they convert it over, the mixing level is lower. And so they tend to raise the surround levels. I would argue they make it louder. Louder meaning less dynamic range, but everything's pushed up a little bit. It's not done with a compressor. It's done naturally, meaning they just turn the levels up and use their ears to kind of balance it back out, but it is louder. And then the other thing that seems to happen is there's another post-process. Before it gets sent out on that drive that goes out to all the companies to either go onto disk, onto a streaming service, or out to Kaleidescape, is some additional processing. That's where things like high-pass filters get put into play. Then when it goes to Netflix, Apple, whoever, they may do some additional processing to it to optimize it for their purposes.
Okay, so let's talk about the Strato V. So I did a review of the Strato C with my 8 terabyte TerraPrime hard drive. You've got the Strato V. This is their Mac Daddy. This is their latest, their flagship unit. What are the benefits of Strato V over Strato C?
Well, when you first reviewed the Strato C, there was some criticism amongst the viewers that it didn't include Dolby Vision. So it did support HDR. The Strato V does rectify that issue. It now supports Dolby Vision.
So here's the argument that I always thought. Dolby Vision, yeah, it's nice to have it, especially if you have a fixed panel display, and then you can support all the different HDR formats and Dolby Vision. But most people are using a Kaleidescape in a home theater with a projector. Yeah. I don't know how many projectors have Dolby Vision, maybe 1 or 2?
Actually, the one sitting over there is the only one that really has that built in.
Which is the projector you're using that has Dolby Vision?
It's the Valerian projector that's gone, everybody's gone nuts for. It is not a feature that's commonly available, and there's good reason for that, but there's also a reason why it doesn't matter that much. So for those that don't know, in the cinema side, it's basically just tone mapping that's done during the creation of the content. So they make the content, they make that far field mix, right? And then the video is done. And the video is actually done typically on a display that's 1,000 or 2,000 nits. The actual dynamic range of HDR is up to 10,000 nits. And what they do is they optimize it to look good on that 1,000 nit grading display. Then it gets tone mapped for the projector that's only doing, in the case of Dolby, 108 nits. Now, that's actually pretty bright. We don't typically see 108 nits in a lot of home theaters. So that would be newer, better projectors that could do that. Dolby Vision Consumer is a little different. Basically what they've done is included some metadata to make it so that you can offload a lot of the complex processing that's needed for dynamic tone mapping and do dynamic tone mapping in the display based on that data instead of a processor that actually can do a look ahead, read the display, and figure out what the transfer function is supposed to be. Something like a Mad VR or a Lumagen can do that. Dynamic tone mapping done right looks just as good, if not better, as Dolby Vision. My argument for why that wasn't really ever a huge issue was the fact that in the kinds of systems these were going into, in many cases we had access to these processors that were capable of getting that transfer function that we needed back out for whatever the nit limit. Dynamic tone mapping is only needed when a display can't reproduce those nits. Modern high-end like OLED displays are doing 1,000 nits plus now. So that dynamic tone mapping is not as necessary as it used to be. But there's no denying that Dolby Vision content, especially in streaming, was looking better on Dolby Vision displays.
I agree, especially on Apple TV. I noticed that.
So getting access to that content is still a plus. Like I never saw it as a huge loss for those dedicated theaters, but when you're plugging it into a TV and you're playing this content back, there does seem to be some benefits. I had been told by somebody in the know that there appears to be something going on with certain streaming services where they seem to be intentionally crippling the HDR10 mix to make Dolby Vision look even better yet. And what they said was they were doing analyses of the video on the discs and then doing the same analysis on the streaming, and they were finding that there was almost no difference between Dolby Vision and the HDR10 on the disc, but there was a big difference in the streaming. They don't know why. I don't know why.
Conspiracy.
Well, it does mean that when you're seeing differences, some of those differences may be artificial and not actually because Dolby Vision is so much better. But
it's again another reason why you need the source. You need it either on an optical disc or you need a Kaleidescape.
Yeah, but I think the biggest point is that the Kaleidescape gives you access to the best quality. You do get Dolby Vision now. Now the other thing they've done is they've added a hard drive, and it's just under 1 terabyte, which allows you to store about 10 HDR 4K movies on it. So you no longer have to have the TerraPrime server. You can actually have just the player. So they've brought the price of entry down quite substantially. So it's no longer the player, which I forget the exact price of those now, was it about $4,000, and the server. Typical cost of entry was over
like 8 or 9 grand.
But now with this, you can just have the player, and honestly, for most people, it's more than enough. Like it gives you what you need to be able to watch movies and enjoy it. It's not like you can only own 10 movies. You can own 10,000 movies. You just have to delete some and load others.
You get it from the cloud, basically.
Yeah, you get it from the cloud. And it does that deleting, like basically you just say, I want to watch this one, and it will delete whatever the oldest one is you downloaded and puts another one on, unless you somehow protect it so it can't.
So on the Strato V, when you download a movie and you have, let's say you have a 1 gigabit connection in your room, the download time for 4K is around 10, 15 minutes for a movie? That's
been what I've experienced, and that's what I believe they claim. So if you don't have a solid state server, 10 to 15 minutes. Now, if you do add the solid state TerraPrime server, they've actually clocked it as quick as 4 minutes. And I actually would like to add a TerraPrime solid state server at this point because I would like that ability.
So you do a lot of custom install, you do a lot of home theater integration and design for people. How often do you implement Kaleidescape in those rooms?
Like 95% of the time.
Wow.
I mean, it's in almost every single system we do. And I have to say, of the ones I've done in the last 6 months, there were 2 or 3 that didn't have it, where they've come back very recently to say, I'm ready to buy one. So I would say in anything over $100,000 total equipment cost, they've been going into every single one of them. And at the kind of level that I work in, everything is at that price point.
And what's the typical reaction when you do an install like this and they add the Kaleidescape after the fact?
They've all really liked it. So I had one client recently who I showed them them the app on my phone and they were going through content and they just loved the access to content they had. When they did get it in their home, they just loved, like one of the things I think you covered that's one of the neat things, they have the largest selection of concert videos of anybody.
Yes.
Like, I wish it was bigger yet. It is bigger than anyone else has. They were going through it and they're really into concert videos and they love that selection. I've had other people who are just like hardcore movie guys and they love that they can have a very wide range of content type and have access to it. There's certain limitations, and I hear complaints like, you don't get access to certain versions of the movie because somebody got some sort of an exclusive, like some film that was remastered in 4K and it came out like on Criterion, for instance, and never made it over to Kaleidescape. But for the most part, that kind of stuff is rare. And what it really is doing for you is it's giving you 90% of the convenience of streaming, but with all the quality of discs.
Why don't you talk about, we understand that the video quality, audio quality is the best you can get on Kaleidescape. What are some of the other advanced features that a custom integrator appreciates, like for your masking of your screen and stuff like that?
So Cedia came up with RP22. That's audio standards for best practices for putting together a cinema, right? So they're working currently on RP23, which is the video standard. I'm not talking about what's in that right now, I want to be clear, but what I am going to tell you is what the types of things that we think are important. So a lot of us in this sphere feel that masking, for instance, has a lot of value in enhancing the experience. But the problem is movies are all sorts of different aspect ratios. And it can be kind of a pain in the butt to have to go to a client who's spent good money on a system and said, okay, you're going to have to look at the movie and it's going to tell you what the aspect ratio is, and then you're going to have to push that button on the remote and then it's going to mask for you to that level, and then you'll watch it and everything will be good, and then when it changes you're going to have to push that other button to the other aspect ratio. So the Kaleidescape can actually send out signals of what the aspect ratio is, so that something like, I think it's a Lumigen, it's the most common one that's used for this, can then basically tell the screen what it needs to do, allowing us to basically automate that masking process. And I will just say, I don't personally do that. I have people that do that because that's one of those things that I don't fully understand, but we have that capability. And again, for clients that are spending this kind of money, that's a convenience that's really important for them. Some people prefer to do things like stretching of the image. I'm not a huge fan of the stretching method, so I really prefer masking. One of the other things that it can do that's really useful besides the masking capabilities is it allows you to do scripts. So some people, they don't really want to watch the whole movie. They want to be able to show off.
Like demo clips.
Demo clips, yeah. So one of the things you can do is just pick your movies you really like, pick those clips. It's not like it tells you can only do this chapter. You can actually say, I want this 10 seconds of this clip and this 30 seconds of this clip. And then you can play that. So when your friends come over, it makes it really convenient and easy to do demos. And as much as I hate the idea of installing these systems just to show off, I mean, you and I do it all the time. It's a very common thing. And so that is a convenience feature that many of us really like as well.
I have people come over all the time. They're like, just show me the best thing you can for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you could do with the Kaleidescape.
Right, and it can be kind of hard if someone puts you on the spot to come up with a good 5-minute demo. But like, I'm sure you watch movies and you're like, that's a really good demo scene. I got to make sure I make note of that one. So with the Kaleidescape,
I'll give you a perfect clip that you should put on Kaleidescape. The new movie Sinners, the vampire movie. There's a scene where they just do this whole music entourage, right? And they're singing and they're all surrounded in this barn. It's a incredibly immersive experience. When I listened to that for the first time, I'm like, I got to remember this clip and use that in future reviews. It's that good. The Atmos effect on Kaleidescape is amazing, and the video quality too.
Yeah. Kind of to the point for everybody here, it just makes it easier to do that kind of stuff. And a lot of the other systems that are out there, like discs, for instance, that you couldn't really do that with discs. I know that there are hard drive based systems where you rip discs, but I got to remind people, at least in the United States, that remains illegal. As an integrator, it's a really hard thing to sell if you're trying to sell the whole experience, because yeah, you can sell the player, you can sell the hard drive, but you can't sell the disc ripping process.
Right.
To me, it just is easier to stay within the Kaleidescape ecosystem. The other thing is convenience. You don't have to buy the disc. So you just go onto the store and you download the movies that you want. They have, for the most part, all of the new films, like whatever new stuff is coming out or is just coming out of, actually sometimes it's still in theaters and they'll be selling it. And the pricing is exactly the same for the most part, or even sometimes a little cheaper than what you would find on like the Apple download store or the Amazon download store. So pricing is not an issue. The hardware, I understand, has a cost to it, but the movies themselves, the content is not any more expensive, and they do specials all the time. So they often do pricing that is cheaper than what you could get through these others, because you don't often see those kinds of deals on the other stores.
The other cool thing is the interface. So you have all your video art on a wall. You could view it as a list, or you could view it as the covers of the discs. And it's beautiful to look at. You just go through your movies. It looks really impressive when you bring someone in to take a look at your library.
The UI experience, I do think, is a step above. Often this type of product is a step below what you get from companies like Apple or Netflix, just because they don't have the budgets to put into it.
Yeah.
But they actually had an interface that was probably the best interface for that kind of stuff long before other companies did, and others had to catch up to what they were doing. And I think they've continued to maintain a better user experience. What I really like is that I do actually kind of find the screen interface a little hard to use sometimes, just because I don't have great far field vision. I find it easier to pick the content on the phone. And you can go on your phone and you pick your content and you say download, and then it automatically handles it on your system.
Yeah.
What I really like is that you can do either. If you want to go on the screen, you can. If you're more comfortable using a tablet or your phone, you can do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's something that people may not realize is the interface on your phone is functional to what you have in your system for the hardware.
Yeah, it can act as a remote, or it can just act as a way of getting the movies and putting it up there.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you dropping the knowledge again, collaborating with us on Audioholics. Guys, if you like this video, please hit the thumb up, hit subscribe. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Audioholics. We appreciate your support. Check out Matt Pose's YouTube channel, Pose Acoustics. He's an expert in the field. He does home theater design, calibration, you name it, integration, anything you want. Matt's your man. So until next time, my friends, keep listening.